Are you familiar with FBI Special Agents Kyle Seraphin?
I'm familiar with the name.
Is that yes?
I'm familiar with the name. Familiar with the name. Familiar with the name.
Let's bring in Kyle Seraphin. He's the FBI whistleblower who helped expose government censorship of our First Amendment rights.
Now, we only have this memo because a recently suspended FBI agent called Kyle Seraphin brought it to the public. And we're grateful that he did. Kyle, thank you so much for joining us tonight.
He's the host of something that strangely is called the Kyle Seraphin Show.
Kyle Seraphin, I can't thank you enough for speaking out. I knew you guys were out there, and I knew it was just a matter of time, but you got a lot of guts putting your face and your name to this. You're doing a service on behalf of the American people, and from the bottom of my cracked and broken heart sometimes, thank you very much.
Take a look behind the curtain with a real whistleblower and American patriot. Prepare to embrace the uncomfortable truth because this program has no time for comforting lies. Here is civil liberties enthusiast, Second Amendment defender, and recovering FBI agent Kyle Seraphin.
Well, hello, my friends. Welcome to the Kyle Seraphin Show. Today's Monday. It's October the 7th, and we are rolling live right now on Rumble and on X and so on. Thanks for joining us for the program. I had a strange reflection, and I'm coming in under the wire with our time limit right now because I wanted to be on time, but I also wanted to make sure that I grabbed all the little pieces that we should be talking about. Kamala Harris did a very, very serious interview with a very, very serious podcast that's called Call Her Daddy. It's a blonde 30-year-old woman whose claim to fame is that she's a blonde 30-year-old woman on TikTok, on Instagram, and so on. And she runs the single biggest podcast for women and gay men in America, as far as I can tell, on Spotify. So that's exciting. Kamala Harris seems to have this issue with saying things that she doesn't mean to be true, and they turn out to actually be both insightful and true against sort of her better judgment, I think. So we're going to talk about something she said, which was that she doesn't have any biological children, but this isn't the 1950s anymore. It's not the 1950s, so who cares if she has biological children? It turns out it made me think about the 1950s. And when I did, found some interesting things out about the way the 1950s worked, some of the numbers as they ran. The president in the 1950s was preceded by another president we've talked about a lot, FDR. From 1933 until 1953, we had Democrats in office, almost like what we've been dealing with right now and what they hope to accomplish with the Kamala Harris, which would basically be from 2009 until 2028 to 2029, actually, in the early part of the year. They're hoping to have a 20-year run of Democrats. Donald Trump has been the only fly in that ointment. Quite interesting to me. I think that's interesting. We're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about a bunch more. I've got some videos that we're going to share about what's been going on. We're going to talk briefly about October the 7th and the significance of this date, which is to say that the intelligence communities are really, really hoping that there will be an attack. I'm going to give you a reason why that doesn't happen ever. It's never happened on any of the anniversaries of these big things, not in a long time. So we'll cover all that. Before we do, let's get started by saying thanks to one of our sponsors, and then we're going to lead into a video to get us kicked off to think about things. Folks, you guys can check out My Patriot Supply. They are one of the program sponsors here. Actually, I've got something on the screen I got to get rid of. Stand by here. How did that get on here? Go away. There it is. All right. If you think the country's going in the right direction, or do you think it's falling apart, you have to ask yourself that question. And are you prepared? Are you feeling alarmed? If so, you're not alone. Many Americans from all walks of life have taken actions to prepare themselves. I just bought a bunch of water the other day. It starts with an emergency food supply. We did that first. Storing food in your home. It's the right thing to do because we are living in these crazy times, which you guys can probably appreciate. It explains why so many people around you are probably preparing, and right now you can get ready too with a 3-month emergency food kit from My Patriot Supply. It comes with all kinds of different foods. Creamy stroganoff. That's actually one of my buddy's favorite foods in the world, stroganoff. Go figure. Honey wheat bread and a mushroom rice pilaf. The entire kit gives you over 2,000 calories per day. It lasts up to 25 years. And who knows what the country's going to look like even the next couple. So when the day comes, you'll be ready. Go to preparelikekyle.com. You saw it on the screen. Preparelikekyle.com. Order your emergency food kit today. The shipping is free. Preparelikekyle.com. Get yourself squared away, folks. I have a video that I want to set the tone And then we're going to get into what's going on around us, like sort of like the current events. And then we're going to get back to the 1950s. Here's a tone video. I saw this weeks ago and it stayed with me. And I think it's correct. And I had an experience on the playground outside of our church. We went to Mass on Sunday like we normally do at, what time do we have to go there? It's at 8 o'clock Mass. And then sometime, around 9 o'clock, we're sitting out there. The kids have Sunday school. My wife was filling in as a teacher. And we're standing on the playground. And I encountered a family that we've met before. And they're really nice people. So I got no beef with them as people. I've got no beef with them except what they kind of implied to me about the way this country is going. And that's kind of a lot to extrapolate, but it's like a single microcosm that can be expanded out into a trend I see everywhere. And who knows, they might even be listening right now. So I'm not going to name them, just to kind of keep them anonymized. But I think the message that I took away from our little conversation is universalized. And part of it is this video. So listen to this for a second. And women who are going to be immediately sort of irritated by the concept that we're going to be talking about the differences between men and women, and that women cannot do all the same thing that men can do. Try to hear what this man is really saying. And then we're going to reflect on it for a moment.
You can go back to, say, the Victorian era, and men used to treat women with an extreme amount of deference because the generations living then remembered a time when the world was a lot more difficult than people now remember it being. So the physical inequality between men and women was emphasized because the world was a much more difficult place. Men took a paternalistic and patriarchal view on how women should be treated, and women wanted men to take that. They wanted to be safe, they wanted to be provided for, they wanted to make sure their children were safe, and men did what they could. Now, men have won. The fact we've got aeroplanes flying overhead and the fact that we're not about to be invaded is the victory of Western man. Then for some reason women decided, okay, well I'm not afraid anymore. I want what you have. You don't do the things that we do, so you can't have what we have. But men just want women to be happy. They want them to love them. They want their approval. And so if gaining women's approval means pretending women are equal to men, or, saying this, that, or the other, whatever it is, they'll do it. And it's completely taken men off of the throne that they sat on. This throne was never imposed by authority, actually. It was imposed by consent. And the second women withdrew their consent for the man to be on that throne, the throne collapses and the men are just standing around and going, okay, well, I guess I'll just play video games and drink beer all day and smoke weed. And if you don't need me, I won't do anything. Because that's really the whole raison d'etre of being a man, just to be needed by someone else. And it's always been women.
It's always been women, and it's always been that if men are not needed, then they just go away. That is the reason why we see hard times come up when soft men are around. The soft men are simply reacting. Women have a lot more leadership because of their requests than maybe they think. So maybe there is something insightful about the idea of Call Her Daddy as a name for a podcast, although I despise the name. And it made me think about this. This is something that pops up. Public service announcement. This was announced on Friday, I want to say, by our intelligence agencies that work domestically, DHS, FBI, and the IC3, which is a piece of the FBI's sort of internet complaint department. They said that we should be aware that Hamas attacks might motivate individuals to violence in the United States. No evidence for this, by the way. This is just like the fever dream of folks who do this for a living. They write term papers, position papers, they do analysis. I got a verbal message from George Hill, who spent years with the NSA and over a decade with the FBI doing this kind of work. He said every single year, the intelligence agencies call this out. They say that there could be a copycat attack, a inspired attack on the anniversary of things like 9/11, on the anniversaries of things like this October 7th, the Hamas kind of push and invasion into Israel that happened last year that kicked off another round of fighting between the Hamas folks and folks in Israel. And he said it never materializes. There's no basis for it. It's simply people projecting value on a date. And because everybody sort of steps up their awareness, it makes it the worst time to actually carry out one of these attacks. But it doesn't stop them from saying things. This is the stuff that I found very interesting because they can't even agree with why somebody might do this, whether it was like a retaliation or a copycat. It's all just nonsense. So here you have it. The FBI says that they have a potential threat to the United States, various actors. This is the variety of actors in response to the 1-year anniversary and consistent calls by foreign terrorist organizations for their supporters to seek and provoke violence in the West. I mean, they're doing this all the time. That's what foreign terrorist organizations do. They assess that these attacks that were initiated may cause further significant escalations in the conflict and may be a motivating factor for violent extremists and hate crime perpetrators. Notice how they slipped that in? Hate crime perpetrators? Has nothing to do with it, by the way. Like what? Like people are going to go attack gay people on October 7th because reasons? It's not there. There never is anything there. But they want to engage in violence and threaten public safety. Over the past year, they've observed violent extremist activities and hate crimes in the United States. They have a link, which basically is not going to show anything other than the definition of hate crimes against Jewish, Muslim, or Arab institutions, including synagogues, mosques, Islamic centers, and community centers where there are large gatherings. Do you guys see this? They conflate things all the time. This is why our intelligence services at this point are not serious people. They can't even like claim one thing is a problem without trying to do the whataboutism. This is my other favorite part. It could motivate threat actors across ideologies, including those who espouse violent anti-Semitism and Islamophobia. Like, don't forget that it could go either way. It could be mean people. They engage in violence, blah, 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 blah. Anyway, this could be inspiring online messaging. And you know what your resources are? This is actually probably the best part of the whole thing. The resources, which I've cut off on the screen, but actually, I'm going to try and put it back on there. Watch this. The resources are call 911. If you've got any problems, just call 911. So the FBI wants you to know, but if there's an issue, that's who you should call. Call the actual first responders. This is a kind of a theme that we're seeing right now. People that are in North Carolina are seeing that theme as well. The federal government is more than happy to act like they are in charge, that they are going to do things, that they are going to handle business. And when it comes right down to it, who's going to do it? Is it going to be the local police, the fire department? Who's going to get there? The feds? We're now seeing that the 101st Airborne or the 82nd Airborne, I can't remember which one of them is actually deployed, but there are parts of Guard units that are assigned to that. And there are some active duty folks that are getting spent up to try to help out. They're like 8 days late. The federal government is the slowest actor. It's on purpose, by the way. We want that. We don't want our federal government to be nimble and reactive. It's terrifying to think of a big animal that big, like coming at us. But we also don't need to fund them in the way that we do, because your resources are call 911. Again, there it is. Call 911 to report emergencies, including imminent threats. If it's imminent, the federal government is not going to be able to help you. It's crazy. It's crazy that people think the federal government is the solution. I've got multiple examples of this, by the way, and that is the leftist position. The leftist position is trying to build that largest power, the thing that is furthest away from you, over and over. They are trying to make that animal be the one that is the biggest in the fight, when it really ought to be your community centers. It should be your cities, your counties. It should be your state. Your state should be almost the final authority. That's what the 9th and the 10th Amendment were put in place for in the Bill of Rights. Notice 20% of the Bill of Rights means something very specific. It's trying to keep these things out. Another sort of inefficiency we'll cover down on, because this is not particularly related, but I did want to keep covering the story of Ryan Routh. I haven't seen it in the news as much, but here's something kind of interesting. You remember that there was a second attempt on Donald Trump? Someone tried to kill the guy that's running for president. We're just a couple of days out now, 30 days or so, 31 days. Worth noting, the prosecutors are going to try to not introduce anything in this. The federal prosecutors have decided to request an indefinite delay, which, by the way, Ryan Routh's people, his attorneys, they agreed to it. So they're fine with this. They've requested an indefinite delay. This is being reported by a local ABC station, but there are others that did it as well. They did this on Wednesday of last week. Scheduling the trial, they don't want to put a date on the map at all, citing a massive amount of evidence they've gathered in the 17 days since Ryan Routh. The joke inside the Suspendables chat was they need more time for him to commit suicide. I don't know if that's true or not. It's just something that we were kind of joking about. You guys probably have the same sense, is that we're not about to get... They're trying to keep this thing out of the news. They're trying to keep this thing so that it doesn't have any sort of bearing on the election, because it actually is a big deal when one person shoots a guy running for president in the ear and then another person posts up outside of his golf course and tries it again. And we don't have swift and open and transparent justice. This is the reason why Florida had to open up their own investigation into this. Kind of interesting. Florida District Judge Eileen Cannon. There's only going to be so many district judges, so she's the one who actually has it. She, of course, had the documents case with Donald Trump as well. They revealed new scope, the prosecutors did, about the investigation they've amassed, trying to gain insight into Routh's action. The funny thing is I'm not confident all that stuff is necessary. He's said it. He had a weapon system. He was posted in a place where he would have been able to encounter the former president, and they have 2 strong charges on the gun stuff because he's a felon. He's not allowed to have the weapons that he bought. So the 922 charges seemed like a slam dunk. The serial number was either obliterated or it wasn't. And it was obliterated, apparently, which means that they, scratched out the serial number. So 2 out of the 3 things that they've charged him with seem pretty straightforward. In any case, in the past 2 weeks, the United States, that's going to be the FBI, has interviewed hundreds of witnesses. Hundreds of witnesses, and executed 13 search warrants in Florida, Hawaii, and North Carolina. They've seized hundreds of items of evidence, including multiple electronic devices. Yeah, none of this stuff is dissuading us that the intel community was involved with this guy's work over in Ukraine or whatever the heck he was doing. Apparently, they are still waiting on 100 outstanding subpoenas in connection with the investigation, and they estimate that there have thousands of videos to review from the large volume of electronic devices that are collected thus far. Totally normal. It's totally normal for someone to have amassed 4,000 terabytes of data that requires review. You guys read? That's 4 million gigabytes of data. Holy moly. That's a ton of stuff to review. Why? Why is this case so complicated? Now you know, at least. All right. Now you are aware that they are going to sit out here and try to run the clock out on this thing until we never have to hear about it. That seems to be the way it'll work. In any case, I just think it's very interesting when the government is doing its thing, pushing things back. We talked about October 7th briefly. How about this one? Because this also got memory hold just a little bit. We talked about on this program, we'll do it again, Lee Smith running a piece talking about the Iranian man who entered the United States on the FBI's watch, who came into this country, and the FBI sponsored his visa so that he could set up a terror plot, which was garbage. It leads me to that thought that when they say the PSA is watch out for terrorist attacks on this day, Monday, October the 7th, it reminds me that the FBI is actually incentivized to have a terrorist plot kick off so that they can say, look, we predicted it. Yes, obviously we also facilitated it, but then we interrupted it. So we've saved you from the terrorism that we created. That's the story here that Lee Smith is reporting on, which we covered previously. The day after they arrested this dude, who was a Pakistani national named Asif Merchant, if you guys go back, you can find the day just after we talked about Trump's first assassination attempt, and the guy Thomas Matthew Crooks. Crooks was dead. One day afterwards, they arrested this other guy on July the 12th. After they let him in and run around the country for several months in this fake scheme to go to like clubs in Brooklyn and drive around the Bronx trying to report people and get them signed up to be killers with him so that he could make $1 million, some other kind of nonsense. This is what the government does. It's incentivized to do its own thing. It's incentivized to have created problems and then be the solution for said problem. And October 7th is just one more example of that. It's just worth knowing we're living in an unserious time. They're taking our money and they're doing wild stuff with it. The wild stuff is specifically set up so that they can justify their own existence. Here's the thing we've heard was not happening. Apartment buildings are definitely not being taken over by gangs coming in from Latin America, from Central America and South America that have come in and taken over due to the lax border policy. We were told this didn't happen, that the Aurora stuff was a hoax, right? Just in the same way that Haitians going after and living by non-cultural American standards was a hoax. All these things are hoaxes. One of the things that I had in that conversation that I had yesterday, the little thing came up, was that the female, first of all, I had the conversation with the female, not the male, in this married couple. They had one child. They saw that we had 4, and they said it looked really difficult to have 4 kids. It's actually not that difficult. I mean, it's not easy, but life's not easy. And so she said she couldn't vote for Donald Trump in good conscience because he's really mean, and he said things about Springfield, Ohio, that resulted in bomb threats. Now, those of you who follow this program also probably follow a lot of the other news, and we know that a lot of those bomb threats are not being resulted in investigations that are going to result in arrests and indictments and prosecutions because the people who called in those bomb threats were overseas, that they were outsourced through some sort of a call center. So this is all sort of astroturfed and faked. But she didn't know that. And so it leads to this ongoing thing that I keep saying, like, just because you know some of the information doesn't mean that you have the truth. It's what we're always trying to get here. In the same way that maybe Kamala Harris didn't have the questions to the debate that she did with Donald Trump. But if she had the answers, she's still saying it correctly, isn't she? She has a leg up. She can be cheating and still not saying things that are false. Just because you know some of the things that are true doesn't mean that you know the truth. And that's the shading that we get here. So here's a little taste of what's happening in San Antonio, Texas. This is only just, 2 hours down the road from me? It used to be that we were like, oh, it's out in Aurora, Colorado. Here's the San Antonio PD giving a press conference talking about Tres de Agua, taking over an apartment building with 300 different units in it. I thought we were told this stuff wasn't happening. And yet, it turns out, when you bring in a bunch of people that are illegal, some of them are going to be predators. And they do things that predators have always done, which is take advantage of our kindness. That's not it. There it is.
SAPD, we've received several complaints from an apartment complex in the 300 block of Sahara Drive about multiple narcotics violations, human trafficking, and threats to apartment personnel. So early this morning, the task force, including members of SAPD, Covert Unit, the Human Exploitation Unit, the Texas Anti-Gang Unit, members of Texas Department of Public Safety, and the FBI, U.S. Border Patrol, and Homeland Security began an operation at this apartment. We had information that members of the transnational gang, Tren de Aragua, were in control of the area and committing various crimes. SCPD officers and DPS troopers cleared nearly 300 vacant apartments at the complex this morning. The task force processing over 20 individuals that we arrested. We've confirmed that 4 TDA members are in custody. Tren de Aragua members are in custody. 1 TDA member is a confirmed enforcer for that gang. Currently, there's 19 individuals arrested with 15 detainers. HSI, Homeland Security, and the emergency removal operations have taken custody of the 4 confirmed TDA members.
All right, it goes on, and he's just reading out there in a sort of a windy space. But we're being told by San Antonio PD that they just did the thing that we had the White House say was not happening, that this is not a real problem. Yes, you guys said vacant apartments in the chat. It is interesting that there were 300 vacant apartments. I don't know if they just built the building or if it was something that was getting out there. So when Trump starts talking about border issues, when you hear people on the campaign trail talk about misuse of federal funds, and you hear otherwise that it didn't happen, here's the problem. Your government has no problem lying to you. They don't mind. And this takes me back to this sort of thing from the 1950s. I looked at the numbers. Our government was so much smaller. It was probably not doing great stuff back then either, but the numbers were infinitely smaller. Here's a little taste, because I'll play you a clip in a second about Kamala Harris talking about the 1950s, and it's important. But the national debt in 1950 was $257.4 billion. We've given more money to Ukraine than we were in debt in 1950. We've given more money this year. And obviously our money is not worth nearly as much. I find that interesting. I like this. I want to put this historical context out there as we look at there. From March of 1933 until January of 1953, for that 20-year period, which is almost what we'd be dealing with without a Donald Trump, you have unbroken Democrat control. And during that time, the infringements on civil liberties are shocking. They went after guns. Anybody who knows about the National Firearms Act of 1934 knows that they did things that were probably illegal. and should not be allowed to stand. In fact, my friends that work around the ATF said that that's the expectation, is that the 1934 Firearms Act, the way that they've actually limited machine guns and suppressors and some other things, may actually fall. The ATF has that instinct, and that's why they're processing a lot of the tax stamps faster than they ever have, because they want to get as much money out of it, because they're facing budget shortfalls. Our government does tons of things with far more money than it needs to. I threw this on the screen just for funsies. Individual income taxes. These are measured in millions, by the way. 15.7 thousand million. It's really hard because the numbers are so big. But let's just look at 15.7 thousand versus 1.9 million. The difference between almost 16,000 and nearly 2 million, that's in millions of dollars. That's how much individual income taxes have been collected. One, it shows you the value of our dollar has declined so much. And two, that our country takes 75 years later so much more cash in and still finds itself in a massive budget deficiency. Because we used to be a kind of a proper country. We used to be a place where they took in less money. They took less of our money and knew that money was supposed to stay more local. But as the federal government has grown, we've gotten more inefficient and we've gotten nastier about it. I think this video clip, but this one I forgot to label, but I believe that this is going to be our little taste of Kamala Harris talking about the 1950s and why this kind of popped up. She's upset that people are evaluating her based on whether or not she has children. I don't think that's an unfair comparison. Most people in America, for most of American history, have had children on purpose because it was necessary and it gave you skin in the game. And I know that upsets some of you, but it's true. And when you see people that don't, or they have just one and they're overwhelmed by a single child. Meanwhile, I've got a neighbor who's got 7. And some of the people I've met at Catholic Vote have like 7, 8, 9 kids. And they're standing just fine. They're doing it. It's always been doable. It's a shift in values. And that value shift probably happened about when she said in the 1950s.
I want to ask you a question because again, in speaking about women, there has been a very big fixation on biological children, stepchildren, women that have children versus women that don't have children. It's like a huge point somehow of this entire election, right? I saw the governor of Arkansas said, "My kids keep me humble." Unfortunately, Kamala Harris doesn't have anything keeping her humble. How did that make you feel?
I don't think she understands that there are a whole lot of women out here who, one, are not aspiring to be humble. 2, a whole lot of women out here who have a lot of love in their life, family in their life, and children in their life. And I think it's really important for women to lift each other up. You know, I'll tell you, Alex, one of the things that I have really enjoyed about where the discussion has gone, one of the places it's gone, we have our family by blood, and then we have our family by love.
Oh, that feels so good. I just love hearing about that from her. So nice. She's trying to run the clock out. By the way, she's also waiting for like applause and smiles breaks. She's looking for validation in the person she's talking about. She's really bad at this. A little example of that is when she has her teleprompter go out in front of a main stage. I'm going to play you this. I don't know how you look at this person. Like I said, the folks that were sitting next to me on this playground said they're going to vote for her. We just got out of mass. And all I said was, she said, what's the, I don't know how you would vote. Are you planning on voting for Donald Trump? And you don't have to answer that question if you don't want to. And I was like, oh, please throw me a softball. This is what I do for a living. And the fact of the matter is, we just got out of mass. So theoretically, you're a Catholic. How do you vote for someone that says they want to codify Roe v. Wade into law? How do you do that? You've got a childless 30-year-old woman, multimillionaire, wearing a hoodie, sitting and talking to a childless 60-year-old woman, multimillionaire, who wants to be president and doesn't have any kids. Neither of them have, and they don't understand why that would be a problem. They're disconnected from all of the lineage of human history, completely. And they've got, a guy like, don't even get started with the sort of like the conflicts or the scandals that are being hidden up about Doug Emhoff, who seems like a real peach. This is what happens. This is why she's trying to run out the clock, because she can't do serious interviews, because she's not a serious person. Here she is talking to a friendly crowd, and her teleprompter doesn't work. So she just repeats the line. She's doing Joe Biden, but she's, what, 20 years younger? 22 years younger?
And I would be able to get.
That's not the right one. Where's the video here? Sorry, teleprompter fail. Number 4.
Remember his number, 32. Today we got 32 days until the election. So 32 days. 32 days. Okay, we got some business to do. All right. 32 days. And we know we will do it. And this is going to be a very tight race until the very end. This is going to be a very tight race until the very end.
If you don't know what to say, just say it again. If you don't know what the speech was supposed to be, then just say it again. 32 days. Do you hear that? That's a person who doesn't have a serious brain, that can't construct sentences on the fly, that needs to have it written out for her. That's why she waits for applause. That's why she's waiting for a reaction from this lady. The funny thing is that people get this. Like, it's known. Here's Andrea Mitchell talking about how Kamala Harris needs to do more serious interviews. Maybe because even when she does softball interviews, she's terrible at it. I'm going to play you the Andrea Mitchell. I've got another follow-up from this little caller daddy where she says something that's so obvious. Every single person who responded to her post, because Kamala posted this on her official, whatever, Twitter account or her X account, thinking that this is a win. Again, about abortion. She thinks that she nailed it. And it's so obvious to anyone that actually lives in America that has, interactions with men starting at the age of 18. You'll see in a second here. Let's do Andrea Mitchell talking about how she needs to do more serious. By the way, she's lined up some more serious ones. Let me tell you what they are in just a second.
Andrea. I think they've got to double down on doing more interviews and serious interviews, because what I'm hearing from Democratic and Republican business people and a lot of men, and she's got such a big problem with men. I think there's an undercount of the Trump vote. I think there is misogynation in all of this, black and white men. Big problem, but also the business world. They don't think she is serious. They don't think she's a heavyweight. And a lot of this is gender, but she's got to be more specific about her economic plan.
Yeah, she's not a heavyweight. And she's going to go out there and prove it by going on very, very serious interviews. She's going to show up on The View. She's going to do the Howard Stern show. And she's going to do Late Night with Stephen Colbert. And she's also going to do 60 Minutes. So there you go. It's misogyny to say that this woman who has no kids, who has no connection, who has no humility, who says she doesn't aspire to be humble, that's disqualifying for me. As a Christian, it should be disqualifying for you. If you go to Mass on Sunday and sit in the pews next to me and you want to vote for someone that's going to encourage abortion and lie about it, that should be a big problem. And let's just take her on the merits. She didn't do a great job, even with the softball interview. Here she is talking about something that's going to be so obvious to you who are listening. She said that are there any laws that disappropriately affect men versus women? You guys are going to be shocked. This ties to the 1950s as well, or it certainly ties to the presidential sort of lineage there. Let's play this one again.
I want to take a moment, and can we try to think of any law that gives the government the power to make a decision.
I know what you're going to ask.
About a man's body.
No.
Can you think of any laws that give government the power to make decisions about the male body?
Yeah, unfortunately, it's really, really easy. Oh, there it is. From women in our chat, no less. It's the draft, people. There it is. The Selective Service. It became part of American law in 1917, but it became mandatory in 1940. How interesting. Mandatory in 1940, and it was during that period that I just showed you on the screen here, but it was during see, 1940 is between 1933 and 1945 under FDR. And FDR, it turns out, is the guy that we kept hearing about Joe Biden was just like. FDR and Joe Biden. By the way, I typed in FDR, Joe Biden. I got dozens and dozens of articles. I'm only going to show you one later. They really wanted this transitional period of 20 years where they fundamentally transformed the country. And between 1933 and 1953, the attack on civil liberties was extreme. The numbers of things and the growth of government. I told you, I think the APA, the 1946 Administrative Procedure Act, was the death blow to our republic. It fundamentally changed the way the executive and Congress interact. So there you have it. Yet another little tie in there. It's very interesting that she said it's not the 1950s. The 1950s came right after this period of time, and it continued into it. The only kind of saving grace from the 50s, which made it like tolerable, I think, you had Eisenhower, who was a lifelong Democrat and changed just before running. And he's the one who warned us about some of these neocon policies right now, the military-industrial complex, the endless wars, and all this kind of stuff. Very interesting that all these pieces all come back to each other. They want you to trust the federal government. They want you to put faith in the federal government. They want you to get away from a faith in God and something bigger than yourself. Over and over. And maybe that's why they have to lie about how bad the government is at doing what it does. Here is just like peak leftism and excuse. This is the FEMA administrator, the top official in FEMA, telling George Stephanopoulos on a weekend program that the comfort of the employees of the federal government is really important. Sounds familiar, doesn't it? It's the same reason why FBI agents don't want to show their credentials, even though the purpose of the credentials is to show the public who they are and justify that they are there on official business. It's this idea that the comfort of the people that are doing the mission of service, it's fundamentally the opposite of Christianity. And that is a problem, even if you're not Christian. You understand that doing things for the sake of others is important. That's like a humanitarian position as well. The humanitarian values all come from Christianity as well, by the way. But they've just lost the thread. So the purpose of the government, again, is for the comfort of the employees of the government. The mission of the government fulfills the existence of the government. It's the same thing we repeat here over and over again, but they'll say it out loud to your face. And they're absolutely shameless about it.
So much is going viral online as well. One user suggested yesterday that a militia should go against FEMA. It got more than 500,000 views. What kind of impact has this had on the recovery effort?
It has a tremendous impact on the comfort level of our own employees to be able to go out there, but it's also demoralizing to all of the first responders that have been out there in their communities helping people, FEMA staff, volunteers, the private sector that are working side by side with local officials to go out and help people. I need to make sure I can get the resources to where they're needed. And when you have this dangerous rhetoric like you're hearing, it creates fear in our own employees. And we need to make sure we're getting help to the people who need it.
So much is going viral.
We need to get help to the people who need it, but really we need to make our employees feel more comfortable and so that they're able to do what they want to do, which is their job poorly, which is to say, give money away to their political causes. Interesting how that always works too. The scandal that's been going out there right now is that tons of money, like $66 billion in FEMA funding, the Federal Emergency Management Agency. You'd think that their job would be handling emergencies, not plans, by the way, plans where you bring in a bunch of people that don't belong here. The goal should be that you handle emergencies. And what they've done is they created an emergency, Biden-Harris's thing, the border czar situation, this poor lady who now is running for president and has no business being in the race. She's not talented enough. They've given all their money away, so they're not able to help the people. We're being told that the $750 that you keep hearing about that's available for the folks who need it desperately, that it's a loan. You're supposed to pay the federal government back for it. What is the purpose of us spending all of these taxes with this theoretically safety blanket that we've created if the blanket is going to be given to people who are not Americans, not people who pay for it? It's ongoing. And now they're saying that that's a lie. Of course it is, because it's really, really bad for their position. It's bad for what they've been trying to argue that they've been doing. But the numbers are really clear. Here's a little taste. This is Karine Jean-Pierre saying the thing that she said is not true. They're all getting hit with facts because they say stuff like praising one thing and they just hope that Americans have no memory. And I will tell you, based on this little conversation that I had on Sunday, Americans not only don't have a memory, they don't even go look for the information in the first place. So most of them didn't hear it the first time around, and they sure as heck aren't going to hear it the second time around. It's the reason that these sort of side-by-sides are so important.
It's just categorically false. It is not true. It is a false statement. No, Biden did not take FEMA relief money to use on migrants. Funding is also available through FEMA's Emergency Food and Shelter Program to eligible local governments and non-for-profit organizations upon request to support humanitarian relief for migrants.
Like, that's it. It's right there. And then look, you have all the headlines snatched up here. These are all FEMA releases. These are all, this is compiled by Brianna Morello, who's a friend of our show, I've been on her program a number of times. Look at this. Homeland Security announces $380 million in additional funding to communities that are receiving migrants, $110 million for emergency food and shelter to assist migrants. New York City, $104.6 million. FEMA asylum seekers, $300 million in direct funding from DHS, which is a FEMA announcement, to communities that are receiving migrants, and another $340 million for new competitive awards process. Department of Homeland Security, $12 million in funding, distribution, blah, 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 blah. $77 million receiving for communities that are receiving migrants. This is nonstop. They've taken all this money and they've thrown it all out there. I've got another video that I'm going to show you guys in a second, which is a woman named Lisa McCain just pushing these administrators, and they're smug and they don't care. Before we get to that, let's say thanks to people that do. My friends at Patriot Coolers. How do they care? They give a portion of every single sale back to veterans, the kind of people you're going to be hearing about in the next video clip. They help veterans who have mobility issues make their homes accessible. You guys can get your own at patriotcoolers.com. You can get the official tumblers of the Kyle Seraphin program. You guys have seen the various ones we have. I've got a new link, which I will put out. I will correct the show notes. They're not on there right yet, but they will be for the audio. We have a link you guys can go to. It's got basically direct links where if you want to buy a Suspendables mug, they are pre-configured so you don't have to mess around. I told them we need a one-click link for my folks, and they've got them. You'll save 10% by using promo code Kyle, K-Y-L-E. Again, it's at patriotcoolers.com. Look in the show description if you want to link directly to sort of like the Suspendables cups and Kyle's favorite stuff that I'm using. It's going to be under there. And again, promo code KYLE will save you 10%. Support our sponsors. If you're in the market, they are the best. And like, I use them all the time. I can't even tell you. We go out to Costco and we just make sure there's the 50-quart cooler in the back because I fill it up with frozen goods. And most people don't think about using their coolers except when they're camping, maybe when they have some friends over. I think I use it probably 3 times a week. My wife is like furious if I leave it out. She's not furious, but she's frustrated with me if I don't leave it in there because it limits how far you can go. If you can keep your frozen stuff frozen for longer, you should be doing that. Okay, here's a really good example, right? It continues to happen that these people do not care and they don't know the answers and they're like totally comfortable with it. Our government actually has the ability to have a lot more answers than they want to lead on to. I got a little text message today, by the way, from a friend of mine who works for the FBI. And this is not like a disclosure of any kind, but the Republicans approved $20 million worth of funding to replumb the J. Edgar Hoover building, and they didn't get it all done. So the FBI just reauthorized another $10 million in a no-bid contract to fix plumbing. If you think these people don't hate you, they don't care about you at all. $10 million to fix J. Edgar Hoover building plumbing. $750 on a loan to people that just had their entire lives wiped away when they've been paying into federal taxes for quite a while. This is the issue. How come we're not spending the money where we need to?
And I would be able to give you a but do you know the answer? Because I do. So you might want to get a pencil and paper and take some notes because I'll help you do your job. The federal government spent over $66 billion on illegal immigrants in 2023, according to the Federation for American Immigration. Does anyone here want to guess how much we've spent on homeless veterans in 23? Guess? High? Well, let's just start. Higher, lower, the same? Anybody want to guess?
Fractional.
Fractional. Thank you. 3 billion. 66 on illegals, 3 billion on people who have laid down their lives for this country. Can anyone explain up there why that makes sense?
Well, one is including all sorts of benefits, and one is just looking at a very, very narrow slice.
No, I'm using the same numbers. Sir, you are. I am using apples
it would
to
be
apples.
a very different.
I'm using apples to apples. So since you know, why don't you share with me?
We don't track
you
U.S.
don't know.
We don't check.
You don't
track
know.
U.S.
Okay.
veterans in the census, so that would be very helpful if we did. Then I would be
Yeah,
able to
we
give
did.
you a
But
very.
do you know the answer? Because
good-
I do. I do. So I appreciate your opinion of which you have no facts on. But let me continue and let me educate you some more.
I don't think she got through to that guy. I don't think she's getting through to anybody. But isn't it interesting that they don't have the data on the things that would be helpful to do their job? What they do have is the things that make them look okay. Again, the federal government's job is mostly shoring up the need for the federal government. That is what a self-licking ice cream cone is. Most of us would be just fine if we experienced a complete government shutdown. It's one of the questions we asked on our call-in show. And for those of you who are supporting us over on Locals, you guys can do that at kyleserafin.com. I see there's new supporters and subscribers every single day. Totally great. We get to chat about certain things. And most of you, we talked to one of our original supporters, and I was like, hey, do you remember any time that the federal government shut down, and did it screw up your business? Did it screw up your life? It's like, no. Do you remember when the federal government stepped in and put some demands on men's bodies and women's bodies when they said that you had to get a vaccine shot and it just destroyed businesses? Yes. It's a net harm. This is another little piece from the 1950s. This is just like sort of an amalgamated answer through Google. I found it interesting. In 1950, the United States federal deficit was around $3 billion. In other words, they spent $3 billion more than they took in taxes. And at the end of the year, at the end of that fiscal year, the total debt that the United States owned, the public debt, was $257 billion. We are now coming up on $40 trillion, right? We're talking about 3 extra zeros being on, from billions to tens of trillions of dollars. It's shocking. It seems quaint that when I was graduating high school, there was this big discussion about our problem. And our problem is that we were coming up on $10 trillion. We are now 4x that in not very much time. We've taken on so much debt because none of these people have any concept of how to run a business. They have no concept of what they're actually supposed to be doing. What is the purpose of government? The government would tell you is that people need jobs. And what's even more incredible is that they didn't actually increase the deficit that much, even during times of war when we went to Korea, because it was financed through taxation. So I had this little interesting piece here of just in general. I just want people to know some facts as you go out there in the world. You're hearing this discussion about the quote unquote, the rich need to pay their fair share. That seems to be an overwhelming push from people on the political left. That's definitely one of Kamala Harris's talking points. By the way, she would be considered in the rich. But if you look at the top quintile of all income tax payers in 2022, and this is always the case, by the way, if you distribute this across, in the 1950s, we had a 91% tax on people in the top 1%. The top 1% of all income tax payers in this country pay 31% of all the income taxes, which is 54% of all the taxes taken in. And then you start looking at that the other piece of the pie there, which is going to be on the bottom right, 54% of the federal government's budget that comes in from taxes, 54% is income taxes from individuals. 30% are payroll taxes, which are taxes that the companies that employ you have to pay just for the right to employ you. So those are also generally paid by people who are in the top 1% or the top 20%. That top quintile includes 25% more. We're talking about 56% of all the taxes paid are paid by the top 20% in this country. Most taxes are paid by the wealthy, overwhelmingly. You have a small percentage of them that are corporate income taxes, like 9%. You've got something listed as other. There's another one that's like customs and duties that are pretty small. Excise taxes are 2%. The overwhelming majority of taxes in this country are paid for by people who run businesses and who have high net worth and high incomes. So I'm just tired of these people saying things that are false. But that's how you end up with an administrator in the federal government talking about the job of people who are trying to provide help to those around them. It's their job to get out of the way so that the FEMA people, the useless government employees that showed up late and showed up barely at all, and don't want to do the job. By the way, Glenn Beck went out there with Corey Lewandowski and they were rolling around knocking on trailers and saying, hey, why aren't you in a more prominent location? And they're like, well, this is the place that the manager said that we should be because, and it's always women. I don't know why, but it is. We're just looking at the world very, very differently. And my belief is that we've basically allowed a lot of these women to get into positions and they look at the world differently than men do. Men see problems and solutions. In fact, every single one of you that's married knows this thing. Your wife brings you something and tells you she's upset about something. What are you doing? You're trying to figure out how to solve it. She might just want you to listen. But it'd be really helpful if she said that up front, because if you start telling me a problem, my job is problem fixing. And you'll notice that when you feminize things, like we're just supposed to listen to the problem, that's not how we're wired. Get militias out there. Get people out there to start cutting down trees. Get people out there with trucks. Get out of the way, federal government. Stop trying to protect me. I understand that there's a risk. Going out in floodwaters is never safe. But guess what? If people are going to die, that's what your job is as a man. You go out there and you face down nature and the threats. So for me, it was very telling that not only did I hear people on the playground that didn't know about actual facts, that thought that the problem that Donald Trump was that he was divisive. That was the other thing that was said. I can't vote for Donald Trump because he was so divisive during his presidency. And what you never saw was anyone discuss, and I asked her, I said, does it look like it was his fault that he was divisive, or the fact that he was covered in such a way that everyone felt like he was divisive? Because I don't think he's a nice person all the time. That's pretty clear. What did that have to do with governance? Where in the Constitution does it say the president must be nice and make people feel good? Like his job is to just execute the policies of Congress, the laws that are passed underneath him. Sign them into bill, sign them into law, or veto them based on what he claimed. We're asking for things that don't make a lot of sense. And it reminded me, I played you guys this the other day. I'm going to play just the beginning of it. You guys want to go back, you can watch it from, I think it was from Friday's show. Bill Burr talking about first ladies getting too chatty. It seems to kind of tie together because I got another first lady who got pretty chatty and seems to represent a lot of the issues we have here. Let me play this one more time. Bill Burr talking about the real problem.
Each presidency, like these first ladies, they've just gotten more and more like chatty, more and more chiming in, like leaning into the frame, spitting out their ideas. It's just like, well, why are you talking? Right? You weren't elected. Shut up. Your husband's not running a lemonade stand here. He's running the country. You don't just chime in. Let me guess, is this considered sexist?
Right? It's misogyny, like Andrea Mitchell just said. That's the real problem here. Men are being sexist and they're mean and they're not validating the opinions of women. Women, you get a say. It's just not in public when you are not in the role that you're supposed to be dealing with this. You remember who the ultimate example of that was? The most chatty first lady ever, who stepped into a place that nobody needed her and found out when she went on the national stage that nobody liked it? Hillary Clinton. Here she is talking about something that she wants to fix. It's the Section 230 of the Federal Communications Act. She wants to revoke the protections that platforms have because she wants control. It's interesting that this original mechanism of control and allowing pass-through happened under FDR. It happened in 1934. Like I said, those kind of attacks on civil liberties, they want to finish the job on a lot of this stuff. They want to push through. They were like, hey, we had some restrictions, but it wasn't enough. We've obviously seen that people have adapted to it. So here is the original chatty, the OG chatty first lady, for those of you who are begging not. You have to hear what she says. Listen to what she says about social media censorship and how badly they need it. It's another thing I brought up yesterday sitting on a playground. I said that the Harris regime, the Harris-Biden regime, one of the nastiest things they've done, abortion for all, opened up our borders, devastated the economy for various reasons. But they've also imposed censorships, which I think are fundamentally un-American. They hate guns, which is sort of that last line of defense that Americans' personal sovereignty rests on. And they hate the idea that you're allowed to have your own opinion that disagrees with a government when the government is not very good at anything. And they prove it over and over and over again that they're happy to lie to you. Here's the best. Here's Hillary Clinton.
We should be, in my view, repealing something called Section 230, which gave, platforms on the internet immunity because they were thought to be just pass-throughs, that they shouldn't be judged for the content that is posted. But we now know that that was an overly simple view, that if the platforms, whether it's Facebook or Twitter X or Instagram or TikTok, whatever they are, if they don't moderate and monitor the content, we lose total control. And it's not just the social and psychological effects, it's real harm.
Yeah, it's social and psychological effects, and it's real harm, and we lose total control. And we need that control if we want to do the things like tell you what to think and make sure that you're squared away with that. She did actually say something later on in that interview that I agreed with. She said that kids shouldn't be having phones in schools. But the problem is, as usual, she thinks that the government should be the ones who decide that. Because these people don't believe in your right as a parent. This is the whole idea of it takes a village, which was also referenced in this interview. She doesn't want parents to be able to have the ability to send or not send their kids to school with phones. I don't think they should be in school either. They didn't have them when I was in school. It wasn't reasonable. It wasn't something that it took away from what you were trying to accomplish in the school. But that's a parent's job, not the government's job. It's certainly not Hillary Clinton's job, and definitely not Kamala Harris's job, who doesn't even have kids, and who became an adoptive parent when the kid was 16 and didn't even make it to her high school graduation. For all the people out there that want to defend her and the whole Kamala thing, which is nauseating, she basically married in and then is claimed to be a parent for optics, from everything we can tell. And then just look at the fruit. The fruit is pretty gross. Ella Emhoff is like not a very healthy looking kid. She doesn't look like someone she looks like someone whose father didn't love her. She looks like she's doing modeling right now, which is nasty, but she's like this far away from dancing on a pole, looking for attention from men. That's what it looks like from my end here. Anybody who's ever seen women that look like they had bad parenting and mostly absentee fathers, that's what it looks like. It looks like a bunch of face piercings, trying to go androgynous, sitting on your dad's lap awkwardly when you're in your 20s, like hard pass on all that. In any case, the idea that we're not the 1950s, I would say the sad thing is that we're not the 1950s. She's right. Democrats did their fundamental transformation between 1933 and 1953. They changed this country forever. We're still reaping the whirlwind. They thought they were going to get another shot at that same, it was 75 years later. That's when Barack Obama popped up. And they thought they had another 20 years. Donald Trump's been the only 4-year break in that plan. And it was more of a speed bump than it was a reversal for those who have seen it. And anybody that's out there saying Donald Trump's going to fix all this, I got a problem with that too. But darn it, someone's got to hit the brakes. So I don't mind telling people outside of church that that's my intended, that's where my vote is intended. And I definitely don't mind disagreeing with them politely. The question is can any of them hear it? And we're, as Kamala said multiple times, we're 30 days away, right? We're 32 days away. We're 32 days away. We're right on the edge of this thing. I don't think a lot of people are going to change their minds. And I think there are far more uneducated and incapable voters in this country, which is why I keep saying, even though I retweeted something earlier today, saying go out and register if you're in PA or Georgia. These are your last couple days to register to vote. Do it. Like, row for the shore. But I don't think the voting is going to save us this time. I think it's prayer. It's prayer for the people that are in the pews next to us that still somehow have managed to make it through the last couple years and are nominally Christian and think that voting for someone that is not just like wishy-washy on abortion, but is for it all the way up to the point of birth. I don't get it. I don't understand how you can do that. All right. I want to have a little bit of a lighthearted kind of end here. Let me also say thanks to my buddies at Catholic Vote who just had a piece on how if we can win the Catholic vote, we actually can take the entire country. There are more Catholics that are squishy, confused, not getting the hard line. Catholic Vote is out there trying to reach them where they are in the pews and get them into the voting boxes. Faith, family, and freedom are the governing principles. CatholicVote.org. Make sure you guys are getting the loop. You'll get more stuff. You'll get more news. You'll get more information. You don't have to be Catholic. You don't have to be Roman Catholic to do that. If you're Christian, if you're conservative generally, you will benefit from getting the loop, and I recommend you guys do that at CatholicVote.org. Just jump on their website, sign up for the email. You'll never be sad you do. You may not read it every single day. I don't have to grab it every single day, but whenever I do, I'm like, oh yeah, there's a bunch of good stories in here. They're covering things the way I want to see it. There's some good stuff from Daily Wire in there today as well. They don't just do their own news, although they do their own as well. All right, follow them on social media at Catholic Vote. Let's go ahead and wrap this up with something kind of silly. I saw this. We should still laugh. We should still make fun of things that are dumb. Even though I like to think that we were more of a proper country in the 80s, there was still a bunch of dumb stuff. One of the dumbest things that I remember from being in the 80s was this fixation on karate. How many movies were made about like karate guys? They were really bad. Like they were so silly. Here is a fat guy who's out of breath in a karate, I don't know, gi. And he's getting knocked over by an energy pulse that some lady. This is another one of those upside downs. Women, you can't fight men, not reasonably. The average man is stronger than an exceptional female. Just accidentally. That's just the way the genetics work. That's just how God built us. That doesn't mean you're not valuable. It just means that you can't get into fistfights with men unless you can throw an energy pulse. This is an ER doctor. I'll let you decide how serious he is about it. He's trying to help this poor man who just got knocked out by an energy blast.
It seems very strange to us Westerners that we think that a simple sound or a phoneme would have the ability to affect a person in that way. What's even stranger is the idea that using the sound and projecting energy can actually knock somebody out.
Oh, it absolutely.
Samantha is going to try for her first time to actually knock me out using just the sound and the energy projection.
Okay, Samantha. She's harnessing too much. Hey, Samantha, no. Shit. Flip him. Flip him. Cross his legs and sit him up. Get behind him so you can hold him up. Slap him in the kidneys. Yes, massage his scalp and then slap his neck. Both sides. Slap him in the other side of the neck. Good. You coming to? Starting to wake up. He's not there. Pop the knuckles on his fingers. Okay. Good. Whew. Samantha. Damn. Ease up.
If you can,
probably blown his pupils, Samantha.
If you can shoot in tight, you should be able to see that the pupils are actually dilated.
Yep.
As a result of
that push.
The initial push.
That push was insane, Samantha. You've got to ease up. So dangerous.
And the guy who's worked in an emergency room, ER physicians have some of the strangest senses of humor. And that guy did a really good job with that. He's giving that fake emergency. He's basically commenting on all the stuff they're doing, slap him in the neck and massage his scalp. Don't do any of those things if somebody passes out in front of you. Don't cross their legs and sit them up and punch them in the kidneys and slap them in the neck or pop their knuckles. Like everything there is so weird. The internet is full of so much stupidity. For some reason, that connected with me today because it was a woman not touching a man, but knocking him over. Ladies, you can do that. You do it with emotions. You don't do it with like your chi and blowing the pupils out of some poor fat guy who was already out of breath. Anyway, all right, that's what I got for the day. If you guys are seeing, I'm wearing the all black t-shirt and I'm supporting my buddy Garrett O'Boyle. If you guys want to support my friend, you guys can do that by going to our merch store. It doesn't benefit me financially at all, but it does give my friend Garrett something to do on the down days so he can slam out some t-shirts for you, some hats and so on. It's the-suspendables.com, suspendables.com. Just like everywhere else, we ask to use the promo code Kyle, Kyle. That'll save you 10% on whatever the listed price is. You can still get the Suspendables pins. Look, can I just say one more thing about this too? Look, this is the way the badge is worn. Just remember this. If you're getting Suspendables merch, eagle down. The eagle is down. The badge is upside down to your eye, which is right side up the way that we do it. Why? Because the agencies in the federal government are under duress. Just like we fly the flag upside down, we're flying and we're wearing the badge upside down to let people look at it and go, something is wrong. And there is something wrong with our government. And this is just a little reminder. That's what the Suspendables badge means. That's why I just had a friend of ours who reached out and said, look, I've got my Suspendables stuff. And I'm like, bro, they're upside down, which is to say the eagle is up. The eagle is down right now. It's true across the government. We're in an upside down time. All right, that's all I have to say for today. We'll see how this week goes. I know we're coming into the tight space. If you guys are not prepping and getting yourselves ready for something weird, just like at least for a couple of days of interruption, I don't see this going peacefully, no matter who wins. And I just don't think that Donald Trump is going to get a shot. I don't think they're going to let the man back in. I'm so happy to be wrong about this. Nothing will make me happier, by the way, than me being wrong about that. But it just doesn't look good. And you should prepare for that by insulating yourself locally. Not karate, by the way. Like, go meet your neighbors. Shake real hands. break actual bread together, spend real time forging relationships in those neighborhoods that you have. That's going to be the hedge, not the federal government. They're not going to come save you when something bad happens. They're not going to pull you out of your car when the floodwaters get up over the window or the windshield. All right, that's all I got. I really do appreciate you. We'll see you guys again tomorrow. God bless you, and have a fantastic start to this week.
Thanks for listening to The Kyle Seraphin Show, streamed live weekdays on rumble.com/Kyle Seraphin. Follow Kyle on Twitter, Truth Social, and Instagram at Kyle Seraphin.